What's up, guys? Thanks as always for supporting the show. It would mean a lot to me if you would take a second to scroll down and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of our videos. Also, make sure you follow us all over social media so you don't miss any of our content or show announcements. So let's talk about Houston for a minute. This is a kind of an interesting matchup. If you would have asked me after the Laker game, if Golden State would dispatch of Houston relatively quickly, I would have said yes. I would have said they would have gotten rid of them. This is the fifth consecutive, really important game that the Warriors played where they looked a little shaky. They came out of the Laker game and went into that Rockets game, and Jimmy and Steph both struggled. They lose. And then they go into the Spurs game, and they play well enough to win, but then they make execution mistakes down the end, and they lose. And then they go to Portland, and they win, but then they have this home game against the Clippers, and they lose. And then they have this game against Memphis at home, and they're trailing in the fourth quarter. And they just lacked some of that, oomph that they had in the week before. And so now I'm kind of having a hard time getting a read on this team because I feel like reality's probably somewhere in the middle, right? Like they're probably not the team that won every damn game after they got Jimmy, but they're also probably not the team that has struggled mightily over the course of the last week and a half. I think the kind of consistent thing I've seen is that Steph and Jimmy have been able to leverage their gifts in these last two games against these really higher quality opponents to be effective, but the rest of the roster has been really inconsistent. And that is a trend that scares me a little bit as the Warriors head into the postseason. Houston is a very difficult matchup for Golden State just in terms of the types of athletes that they have. You saw a lot of grabbing and holding of Steph tonight. It's going to be a lot more of that over the course of the next 2 weeks, except for it's going to be bigger and better athletes. It's not going to be Scottie Pippen Jr., it's going to be Dylan Brooks. It's going to be Amen Thompson. It's going to be Tari Eason. It's going to be big, strong, super athlete every single possession for that entire series. And you know from the dynamic that took place out of the game last Sunday that Ime Udoka views it as a weakness for this team. He views it as we get physical, they start crying. That's the way he views it. And so you know that he's preaching that. If you don't think Ime Udoka has been saying over and over and over again to his guys, this team doesn't want to play physical basketball, we can beat them up, I guarantee you that's what he's been saying. I guarantee you if the team had a watch party tonight, he was pointing to them and saying, look at this, we can do a better version of this when we face them in that series. And so, again, I think that's going to be really the big swing in the series is Steph, specifically, how he handles that physicality. It doesn't take a lot of critical thinking to say that he needs to be better than he was last week on Sunday, right? He can't average 3 points a game against Houston. That's not going to work. Steph's going to have to be more effective than that. But I'm actually going to point a little bit towards Jimmy Butler and a role that Jonathan Kuminga could have in a series like this. In that type of series, you need your athletes. As you saw tonight, Jimmy just has this ability to leverage his size and strength to be successful in that environment. I talk about this all the time with Kawhi, with LeBron, with Luka, with Jimmy Butler. When you get into an environment where physicality is rewarded, the bigger, stronger athletes tend to go up a level. And Jimmy Butler is just such a great asset to have in that setting. But when you're going against Houston, you're going to have some physical advantages in the form of being able to get Jimmy the ball through screening action with Steph, either advantage as they put two on Steph or switches where Jimmy can go at a Fred VanVleet, where Jimmy could go at even an Amen Thompson. Jimmy has a strength advantage there. And so weaponizing that throughout the series is going to be huge. And this is why I think Jonathan Kuminga is going to be a player that Steve Kerr is going to have to give a little bit more opportunity to as we head into that series. Jonathan Kuminga is an apex athlete among apex athletes. He is one of the few guys that is going to see the apex Houston athletes in front of him and be like, I can still go around and over the top of these guys. He's going to be a guy that's going to be able to generate advantages in that environment. And so I do think it'll be a series where they have to lean more on Jonathan Kuminga and Jimmy Butler. The other side of the ball, though, is where the series is going to be won. If the Warriors can take care of the ball, and they can stay out of transition, they can trap Houston in the half court. If we see the defense we saw in the first half tonight, and for stretches against the Clippers on Sunday, if we see that defense engaged in the half court against Houston, they should be able to shut them down. And again, when it comes down to series picks, I always say the same thing. Which team do I feel like can make each other's units more uncomfortable? Is the Warrior defense more capable of making the Rockets offense uncomfortable than the Rockets defense can make the Warriors offense uncomfortable? That is a dynamic because I think this Warriors defense is truly special. I think they are capable of doing more damage to Houston's offense. And so I will be picking the Warriors to win that series, but it's going to be a pain in the ass. It's going to be 2 really tough weeks. It's going to be a lot of physicality on Steph. You saw Steph get a little banged up tonight. He's grabbing at his tailbone. He's grabbing at his thumb. It's going to be that kind of series. And so execution, avoiding the late game mistakes from tonight, avoiding the late game mistakes from the San Antonio game, making sure that you deal with this team quickly is going to be important. Because if you get rid of them in 5 games, that's where you could buy yourself 4 to 5 days off and give yourself a much better chance to be physically prepared for a series against the Lakers or against the Timberwolves. This is a series that if you let it drag and it goes to 6 games, it goes to 7 games, that's where it could end up being a series that wears the Warriors down in a way that the progressive fatigue just gets too much to handle over the course of a 4-series playoff run.